Good afternoon. Today I am presenting an overview and practical application of Jay Williams' 2025 book, Shared Data, Shared Decisions. So, in my role as an early literacy specialist, I'm constantly looking for ways to bridge the gap between raw data points and meaningful classroom instruction. So, this presentation is going to explore how Williams' framework provides a roadmap for leading data informed instruction improvement that is both effective and sustainable. So, we're going to begin with the purpose of the book. The core philosophy of this text is a fundamental shift in how we view information. So, William argues that we must move from being merely data driven, which can often feel cold or mechanical, to being truly student centered. So, this book reframes data not as a compliance measure or a high stakes accountability tool, but as a collaborative resource. So, by sharing the ownership of data across teams, we can build a culture of collective responsibility where every educator feels invested in every student's success. So, we're going to talk about some key concepts, which is our student centered data use. So, one of the most powerful shifts that Williams suggests is viewing data as a lens rather than a label. So, in literacy instruction, it's easy to label a student as below basic based on a single score, but we know that that doesn't help them grow. So, instead, we're going to use the data as a lens to look deeper into their specific needs, focusing on their individual growth and equity centered analysis. So basically, this approach ensures that our conversation remain focused on the instructional responsiveness, where we ask ourselves what we can do differently to support the student rather than just noting a static number. So, culture before clients. So, a critical takeaway from this text is that culture must come before compliance. Williams explains that shared decision making is impossible without psychological safety and trust. So, if teachers feel that data meetings are a place of judgment or a gotcha moment, the dialogue is going to remain surface level and unproductive. So, as I facilitate the literacy data meetings, my priority is to create an environment of open dialogue where teachers feel safe and vulnerable and be vulnerable about what is and isn't working in their classrooms. So, data teams and collective efficacy. So, when we move into our data teams, our goal is to foster collective efficacy. That should be the goal of every data meeting. And the book kind of reinforces that effective teams do much more than just review spreadsheets. They actually engage in collaborative analysis to generate actionable next steps. So, in my work leading grade level meetings, this means to me moving away from simply looking at the problem and moving toward a shared responsibility for the instructional responses that we're going to implement together. And that leads us going from data to action. Williams outlines a clear cycle for moving from data to action. He begins with identifying the patterns, asking why those patterns exist, implementing a targeted strategy, and then crucially monitoring the impact. So this particular framework that you see, I recently applied this framework towards my third grade comprehension project. And by using this 10-step change process, I was able to move beyond guessing and instead use evidence to drive instructional shifts and track success in real time. So, how does this apply to my work, which is early literacy? So, in our current context, I'm balancing multiple data streams. Those include a mirror screening, beacon proficiency, map growth, alongside our daily formative assessments that we use with HMH into reading. So, Williams' work provides the framework to synthesize these sources. And my goal is to move my particular team beyond just reporting these numbers for district compliance and toward facilitating a shared ownership where teachers feel empowered to use this particular data to drive their small group instruction on a daily basis. And so that kind of moves us into our next slide, which we're talking about equity and subgroup monitoring. So, we cannot talk about data without talking about equity. Williams stresses that importance of equity focused data conversations that intentionally monitor the performance of specific subgroups to close achieving gaps. So, in literacy, what this means is that we avoid those surface level analysis that only look at the average, and instead we look at the trends that affect our most vulnerable learners to ensure that our daily instruction is meeting their specific needs. And we can help meet these needs through strengthening the PLC, strengthening our PLC conversations. So, to make our professional learning communities more effective, the book suggests that we use structured protocols and set clear expectations. And we know often data meetings, they can turn into those unstructured venting modes or those anecdotal sharing. But by using the guidance and shared data and shared decisions, I'm working toward implementing those protocols to keep the dialogue focused and productive. That way, it'll ensure that every minute that we spend results in a clearer path for the students. So I've done some leadership reflection, and as a leader, I know that I have a responsibility to model the transparency and reflection that I ask of my teachers. So this means I have to build a shared language around the data and encourage a culture of reflection rather than defensiveness. So if I model that it's okay to see a red data point as an opportunity to learn rather than a failure, then I have to help set that same tone for the entire building to be data informed and growth oriented. So that was some of my leadership reflection. So how did this book have has a current impact on my literacy instruction? The practicality of this book has a major impact on my work, and it's kind of threefold. First, it helps strengthen our Tier 1 instruction. It improves the quality of data meetings, and it fosters greater teacher ownership. So basically, when teachers see that the direct connection between the students' data and the instructional adjustments, they make a buy-in that can increase exponentially. Here are some long-term implications. As I look towards the future, these practices are about building sustainable systems of improvement. We're moving away from those short-term reactive fixes toward a culture of stronger collective efficacy. So when we share that data and decisions meaningfully, we aren't just looking for those quick bump in scores. We're building that foundation for those long-term improved student outcomes across the entire school. So that's that long-term sustainability piece. So in conclusion, shared data, shared decisions reminds me that for data to have power, first of all, it must be shared. And for decisions to be effective, they must be collaborative. So by keeping the students at the center of every conversation and prioritizing equity and reflection, we can help ensure that data work is not a burden, but basically a bridge to better instruction. So thank you for your time and viewing this presentation.